1 year later, Captain Hyun stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed human embassy on the Council Ring. Below him, delegations from across the galaxy mingled in the grand atrium, celebrating the ratification of the new Sol Accords. "Quite the gathering," said June, joining him at the viewport. She wore the formal dress uniform of the newly established Terran Defense Command, now recognized as one of the premier military forces in the galaxy. "The Council adapts quickly when it needs to," observed Hyun. "Not all of them are happy about it," June noted, gesturing subtly toward a group of Zathari diplomats who stood apart from the main celebration, their postures radiating disapproval. "They don't need to be happy," said Dr. Sung, approaching with drinks for all three of them. "They just need to respect the new reality." That new reality had transformed galactic politics. Humans were now classified as a Tier 1 species, with all the privileges and responsibilities that entailed. Human scientists had been invited to join the most prestigious research institutes. Human engineers were consulting on projects across known space, and human military advisors were now a common sight on Council peacekeeping missions. "To think, a year ago they were trying to place additional restrictions on us," mused Hyun, accepting his drink. "Fear makes for poor policy," said Dr. Sung. "They feared what they didn't understand, so they tried to control it." "And now?" asked June. "Now they understand us better," replied Hyun. "They know we don't want dominion or conquest. We just want our place at the table. And to be left alone to develop in our own way," added Dr. Sung. "Speaking of development," said June, lowering her voice, "the quantum displacement drive passed its final tests yesterday. We can begin installation on the fleet next month." Hyun nodded, watching the diverse species below interact with newfound respect for their human counterparts. The quantum displacement drive would revolutionize space travel, cutting journey times between stars from days to minutes. It was precisely the kind of technology the Council had feared humans might develop, game-changing, paradigm-shifting. "Should we tell them?" asked June, a mischievous glint in her eye. "In time," said Hyun. "Let them adjust to the current situation first. There's no need to remind them of human ingenuity quite so soon." "They'll forget again someday," warned Dr. Sung. "It's the nature of institutions to forget the lessons of history." "Perhaps," conceded Hyun. "But if they do, we'll remind them," finished June. "Again and again, for as long as it takes." Hyun raised his glass. "To humanity's place among the stars?" "To humanity," echoed his companions. Below them, the future of galactic civilization continued to unfold, forever altered by the species that had reminded the Galactic Council of a simple truth: never underestimate human potential. The sky above Kryn Prime burned. Bright flashes of light filled the dark space as ships exploded one after another. The Kryn people had been fighting for their lives for 3 long weeks. Their enemy, the Solarian Empire, was winning. Commander Daewon Kim stood tall on the bridge of the Star Reclaimer, the last big Kryn battleship. His blue skin looked pale under the red emergency lights. He had not slept in 2 days. The battle map in front of him showed bad news. Very bad news. "Sir, we've lost the vigilance," said Lieutenant Yoon-ji. Her voice was tired and flat. She had been at her post for as long as Daewon had been at his. "The Dauntless and Relentless are badly damaged. They won't last much longer." Daewon closed his eyes. 3 more ships gone. Thousands more of his people dead. The map showed only a small group of Kryn ships left. The Solarian fleet was huge in comparison. They had appeared from nowhere 3 days ago, their ships looking like hungry dark birds. "The Solarian ships are using those new weapons again," said Weapons Officer Jun-soo. He pointed to the data on his screen. "Our shields can't stop them. It's like they're not even there." "Do we have any way to block them?" asked Daewon, already knowing the answer. "No, sir," said Jun-soo, shaking his head. "They're quantum disruptors. Go right through everything we have." The bridge was quiet except for the beeping of machines and the soft sound of the air system. Everyone knew what this meant. They were going to lose. The Kryn would join the list of races that the Solarians, had destroyed. The Terran Alliance, the humans, had been fighting the Solarians for 15 years. 15 years of watching colony after colony fall. The Kryn had been allies with humans for centuries, but in the last year, contact with Earth had become less and less. Some said Earth itself might have fallen. "Commander," Yunji's voice cut through his dark thoughts. "Our sensors are picking up something strange. A single object entering our atmosphere." Daewon walked to her station quickly. "Solarian reinforcements?" he asked, his heart dropping even further. "No, sir." Yunji looked up, her eyes wide with surprise. It's a human drop pod. Just one." "One pod?" Daewon frowned. This made no sense. "The nearest human outpost is 6 systems away." "The pod is small," said Yunji, checking her screen again. "Designed for one person." "One person?" Junsu laughed without humor. "What can one person do against a Solarian fleet?" They watched as the small pod streaked through Kryn Prime's atmosphere. It looked like a falling star burning bright against the blue-green surface of their world. "Get me communication with whoever is in that pod," ordered Daewon. "Now!" The communications officer worked quickly. "Connection established, sir." The comm system crackled and a calm, steady voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Jiho Park of Earth Special Forces Recon Team. I understand you folks could use some assistance." The voice was so casual, so confident, that for a moment no one spoke. Then Daewon found his voice. "Captain Park, this is Commander Kim of the Kryn Defense Force. With all respect, what is one human going to do? We're facing a full Solarian battle fleet." "Sometimes one is all you need, Commander," replied Captain Park. His voice was still calm, but there was something in it, a hardness, a certainty, that made Daewon pay attention. "Request permission to land at Central Command." Daewon hesitated. Central Command was their last secure base. If this was some kind of trick— "Sir," said Yunji quietly, "what do we have to lose?" She was right. They were already losing, already dying. "Permission granted, Captain Park," said Daewon. "Sending landing coordinates now." "Received. See you soon, Commander. Park out." The comm went silent. Junsu shook his head. "Sir, with respect, the human must be crazy. Or maybe they don't know how bad things are." "Maybe," said Daewon. He watched the pod's path on the screen. "Or maybe they know something we don't." He turned to his second-in-command. "Sub-Commander Taeho, you have the bridge. Keep our ships moving. Don't let the Solarians get a lock on you." "Yes, sir," said Taeho, moving to the command chair. "Where will you be?" "Central Command," replied Daewon, already moving toward the door. "I want to meet this human." The trip down to the planet took 30 minutes in the emergency shuttle. As Daewon flew, he watched the battle above. More Kryn ships were falling. The Solarians were pushing closer to the planet. Soon they would begin landing troops. Then the real killing would start. Central Command was built inside a mountain. It had been designed to survive almost anything. As Daewon landed his shuttle in the hidden bay, he wondered if it would be enough. He was met by General Minki, head of the Kryn ground forces. The old general looked tired, his blue skin almost gray. "The human has landed," said Minki without greeting. "Medical is checking him now." They walked quickly through the busy hallways. Kryn soldiers moved with purpose, but Daewon could see the fear in their eyes. They all knew what was coming. "What do we know about this, Captain Park?" asked Daewon. "Nothing," replied Minki. "We lost contact with Earth 6 months ago. Some of our deep space monitors picked up heavy fighting in the Sol system. We don't know who won." They reached the medical wing. A doctor met them at the door. "The human is fine," she said. "Tired but healthy. He's waiting for you." Daewon and Minki entered the room. A man stood by the window, looking out at the mountain view. He turned as they entered. Captain Jiho Park wasn't what Daewon expected. He was tall for a human, with short black hair and dark eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore a black combat suit that Daewon didn't recognize. It looked more advanced than anything he had seen before. "Commander Kim," said Park, giving a short bow. "General Minki, thank you for the welcome." "Captain," said Daewon carefully. You said you're here to help. How? Park smiled slightly. Straight to business, good. He reached into a pocket and pulled out a small device. It was round and flat like a coin but larger. With this, Min-Ki frowned. What is it? The answer to your Solarian problem, said Park. He placed the device on the table between them. This will disable their quantum disruptors. Daewon and Min-Ki looked at each other in disbelief. That's impossible, said Min-Ki. We've tried everything. Their technology is too advanced. It's advanced, agreed Park, but not unbeatable. He looked up at the ceiling, where the battle continued above them. Nothing is unbeatable. How do you know this will work? Asked Daewon. Park's face grew serious. Because I helped design the original technology. He paused, his eyes hard. Before the Solarians stole it and twisted it, a loud alarm suddenly filled the room. One of Min-Ki's officers rushed in. Sir, the Solarians have broken through our last line. They're landing troops on the southern continent. Min-Ki's face turned ashen. How many? Thousands, sir. And more, coming. Park picked up the device from the table. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with a fire that Daewon had never seen in any being, Kryn or human. Well then, said Captain Jiho Park, we'd better get to work. Captain Jiho Park wasn't what anyone expected. Standing just under 2 meters tall, the human was lean and moved with an economy of motion that spoke of deadly efficiency. His combat suit was unlike anything the Kryn had seen before. Sleek, black with pulsing blue lines running along its surface. One soldier. General Min-Ki of the Kryn Defense Force couldn't hide his disappointment as they gathered in the underground command center. Earth sent us one soldier? Jiho smiled thinly. Earth didn't send me, General. I volunteered. You expect to turn the tide of this war alone? Asked Daewon, unable to keep the skepticism from his voice. Jiho activated a holographic display from his wrist computer. I don't need to win the war alone. I just need to even the odds. The display showed schematics for the Solarian quantum disruptors. Jiho rotated the image, highlighting specific components. These weapons have a fundamental flaw. I discovered it during a covert operation 3 months ago. The quantum field generators require precise calibration. Disrupt that calibration, and the weapons become useless. How did you discover this? Yunji asked, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. Because I helped design the original technology, Jiho replied quietly. Before the Solarians stole it and weaponized it against its intended purpose. Min-Ki's eyes widened. You're that Park? The quantum physicist who disappeared 5 years ago? Jiho nodded grimly. The same. And now I'm going to fix my mistake. He unfolded a map of the Solarian command ship. I need a small team, 5 of your best operators. We're going to infiltrate their flagship and deploy this. He held up a small device no larger than his palm. A quantum resonance cascade. It will disable every disruptor in their fleet simultaneously. The small attack ship moved silently through space. Inside were 5 people. The human Jiho Park and 4 Kryn fighters, Lieutenant Yunji, and 3 Special Forces soldiers named Tai Sung, Han Bin, and Young Mi. We are approaching the Solarian flagship, said Tai Sung, who was flying the ship. Their sensors will spot us soon. Jiho touched a panel on his black combat suit. Blue lights ran across it, pulsing gently. Not if this works right. What is that? Asked Young Mi, watching the lights on Jiho's suit. A signal blocker, said Jiho. It will make us look like space junk on their scanners, just a piece of metal floating by. Yunji frowned. Will that really fool them? Jiho looked at her. We'll find out soon. They waited in silence as their ship drifted closer to the massive Solarian flagship. It was huge, at least 20 times bigger than their small attack ship. Its dark metal hull was covered with weapon ports and sensor arrays. We're in their sensor range now, said Tai Sung quietly. Everyone held their breath. If the Solarians spotted them, they would be dead in seconds. Tai Sung watched his screen. No alarm, no change in their shield patterns. He looked up with surprise. in his eyes. It's working, Jiho nodded. Good. Take us to the maintenance airlock on the lower section, the one I showed you in the plans. As Tae-sung guided their ship toward the bottom of the Solarian vessel, Jiho checked his equipment one last time. He had his quantum resonance device, tools to hack into the Solarian systems, and a small gun that fired darts filled with a strong sedative. Not enough to fight their way out, but that wasn't the plan. Remember, he said to the others, we get in, set up the device, and get out. No fighting unless we have to. The Kryn nodded. They were all wearing special suits that Jiho had brought, not as advanced as his, but good enough to hide them from most Solarian sensors. Their ship touched the hull of the Solarian flagship with a soft thump. Special magnetic clamps held it in place. Airlock secure, said Hanbin. We can go in. Jiho put on his helmet. The others did the same. Let's move. Getting inside the Solarian ship was easier than they expected. Jiho used a device that tricked the airlock into opening without setting off alarms. Soon, all 5 of them were inside a narrow maintenance tunnel. Which way? Whispered Yoonji. Jiho pointed down the tunnel. The main power core is 6 levels, up and 3 sections over. We need to find a service ladder. They moved through the dim tunnels, stopping often to listen for Solarian crew members. The inside of the ship was hot and the air smelled strange, like metal and something else, something that made the Kryn wrinkle their noses in disgust. What is that smell? Asked young Mi quietly. Solarians, said Jiho. Their body chemistry is different from humans or Kryn. You get used to it. They found a service ladder and began to climb. The ship was huge, and climbing 6 levels left them all breathing hard. At the top, they paused to rest. How do you know so much about Solarian ships? Tae-sung asked Jiho. Jiho's face was hard to read through his helmet visor, but his voice was tight. I was captured once. Spent 3 months on a ship like this before I escaped. No one asked any more questions after that. They continued through more tunnels, following Jiho's directions. Twice they had to hide as Solarian crew members passed nearby. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. They moved quickly and spoke to each other in high, clicking sounds. Finally, they reached a junction where several tunnels met. Jiho checked a small device on his wrist. The power core should be through that door, he said, pointing. Yoonji looked at the door. It had a control panel with strange symbols. Can you open it? Jiho nodded. Yes, but once I do, we'll only have about 20 minutes before the system notices something is wrong. He pulled tools from his pack and began working on the door controls. The others kept watch, weapons ready. Got it, said Jiho after a few minutes. The door slid open silently. They stepped through into a huge room. It was at least 30 meters, across and twice as high. In the center was a large tube of clear material that stretched from floor to ceiling. Inside the tube was what looked like a storm, swirling energy that flashed and sparked. The power core, said Jiho. That's what powers the whole ship, including their quantum disruptors. It's beautiful, said young Mi, staring at the swirling energy. And deadly, added Jiho. Don't get too close. He moved quickly to a control panel near the base of the power core. The panel was covered with more of the strange Solarian symbols. I need to connect my device directly to their power grid, explained Jiho as he worked. Once it's active, it will create a feedback loop in the quantum field. That will disable their disruptors. How long will it take? Asked Yoonji. About 10 minutes to set up, said Jiho. Then we need to get out of here fast. As Jiho worked, the others spread out to watch the doors. The room had 4 entrances, 1 on each wall. They had come through the south door. Hanbin watched the east, Tae-sung the west, and young Mi the north. Yoonji stayed near Jiho, watching as he carefully attached his device to the Solarian control panel. 5 minutes passed in tense silence. Then young Mi's voice came over their helmet comms. Movement at the north door, she said quietly. I think someone's coming. Everyone tensed. Jiho didn't look up from his work. How many? I can't tell, said young Mi. The sensors are picking up multiple life forms. but there's interference from the power core. Hanbin moved to help young Mi. I'm getting readings from the east door, too, he said. More movement. Jiho worked faster, his fingers flying over the device and the Solarian controls. Sweat beaded on his forehead inside his helmet. They know we're here, said Taesung, his voice tight. They must have detected us somehow. Jiho finally looked up. I need 5 more minutes to finish this, he said. Then we can go. We may not have 5 minutes, said Eunji. Her scanner was showing movement at the south door now, too, the way they had come in. Young Mi suddenly raised her weapon. North door is opening. The door slid aside and 4 Solarian guards stepped through. They were tall, over 2 meters, wearing black armor and carrying weapons that looked like long, thin rods. East door, too, called Hanbin as more guards appeared. Keep them back, ordered Eunji. Jiho needs more time. The Kryn opened fire with their weapons, guns that fired pulses of energy designed to stun rather than kill. Jiho had insisted on that. We're not murderers, he had said. 2 Solarians fell, but more came through the doors. Soon all 4 entrances were open, with Solarian guards pouring in. There are too many, shouted Taesung as he fired again, and again. Jiho was still working, his hands steady despite the chaos around him. Almost done, he said. Just need to activate the final sequence. Eunji was firing at Solarians coming through the south door, but they kept coming. A blast from a Solarian weapon hit the floor near her feet, sending sparks flying. Jiho, she called. We can't hold them much longer. Done, he shouted, pressing a final control. The device attached to the panel lit up with bright blue light. The cascade is starting. We need to get out of here now. How? Demanded Hanbin. He had taken cover behind a piece of equipment, but Solarians were closing in from all sides. Jiho pointed to a small door half hidden in the wall near the power core. Maintenance exit. It leads to an emergency evacuation route. Young Mi was hit by a Solarian blast. She cried out and fell to her knees. Taesung ran to her side and helped her up. Go, shouted Jiho to the others. Get to the exit. The cascade will cause an electromagnetic pulse when it activates. You need to be at least 2 decks away. What about you? Asked Eunji. I'll cover you, said Jiho, pulling out his own weapon. Go. Taesung and Hanbin helped young Mi toward the exit. Eunji hesitated, looking at Jiho. That's an order, Lieutenant, said Jiho firmly. Your people need you alive. Eunji finally nodded. Don't die, human, she said. Jiho smiled slightly. I make no promises. As the Kryn made their way to the exit, Jiho turned to face the advancing Solarians. His small weapon looked pitiful against their larger guns, but he stood tall and calm. Come on then, he said quietly. Let's see what you've got. The battle outside was going poorly. The Star Reclaimer had taken heavy damage and Daewon was running out of options. He had ordered all remaining ships to concentrate their fire on a single Solarian vessel, hoping to at least claim 1 victory before the end. Commander, his tactical officer called out. The Solarian flagship. Something's happening. On the main view screen, the massive Solarian dreadnought suddenly flickered, its lights dimming momentarily before returning to normal. Sensors indicate a massive power fluctuation, reported the officer. Their weapon systems appear to be cycling down. Daewon leaned forward. All ships, target the flagship, now! But before they could respond, every Solarian vessel in the fleet suddenly went dark, their weapon systems powering down simultaneously. Sir, exclaimed the communications officer. We're receiving a transmission from Lieutenant Eunji. Her voice came through, breathless but triumphant. Commander, the human did it. The Solarian weapons are disabled. We're making our way to the extraction point now. A new voice cut in, Jiho's. The effect is temporary, Commander. Their systems will reset in approximately 30 minutes. I suggest you make the most of this opportunity. Daewon didn't hesitate. All ships, target Solarian propulsion and life support systems, boarding parties stand ready. As the Kryn fleet surged forward suddenly on equal footing with their formerly invincible enemy, Daewon allowed himself a small smile. 1 human, he murmured. 1 human changed everything. Part 5. A New Hope. 3 days later, the mood on Kryn Prime had transformed. What had been a desperate last stand was now a tentative victory. The Solarian fleet had been decimated, with over half their ships captured or destroyed. The rest had retreated to the edge of the system. In the grand hall of the Kryn High Command, Jiho stood before the assembled leaders, his combat suit exchanged for a simple uniform bearing both human and Kryn insignia. The quantum resonance technology has been distributed to all remaining Kryn vessels, he explained. Your engineers are already incorporating it into defense systems that will neutralize the Solarian disruptors permanently. High Elder Co. Jun, leader of the Kryn people, stepped forward. Captain Park, you have given us more than a tactical advantage. You have given us hope. Jiho bowed his head. The war isn't over, Elder. The Solarians will adapt, develop new weapons. But now we know they can be beaten, said Daewon, who stood nearby with Yoonji and the surviving members of the infiltration team. And you've shown us how to fight them. Not just me, Jiho corrected. Earth has been developing technologies to counter the Solarian threat for years. We were just waiting for the right moment to deploy them. He activated his wrist computer, displaying a star map with dozens of blinking lights. These are human strike teams positioned throughout known space, ready to act. What happened here was just the beginning. Yoonji raised an eyebrow. You mean this was all planned? One human in a drop pod? Jiho smiled. Sometimes, Lieutenant. The most effective weapon isn't the largest fleet or the most powerful gun. Sometimes it's hope, and the knowledge that you're not fighting alone. He looked around at the assembled Kryn. The Solarians thought they were fighting just the Kryn. They forgot about humanity. Trust me when I say, that's a mistake they won't make twice. Outside, through the grand windows of the hall, the first human battleships were appearing in orbit, the vanguard of a fleet that stretched across the stars, coming to stand with their allies at last. In the darkest hour, when defeat seemed certain, it wasn't overwhelming force that turned the tide. It wasn't superior numbers or technology. It was a single human, falling from orbit, carrying something more powerful than any weapon, the indomitable human spirit. High Elder Co. Jun addressed to the Allied Species Summit.